Workplace vaccine mandates have been controversial from the start, but now some Canadian companies are taking a questionable approach to persuade staff to get the jab, including a pay raise. But does this defy the concept of equal pay for equal work? For more, employment lawyer Lior Samfiru joins us now to break down your workers' rights. Good morning, Lior. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning.
So let's call them out. Chapman Ice Cream has announced a $1 an hour raise for vaccinated staff. Legally, can they do this?
Well, Candace, this is certainly problematic. When you provide a benefit to one group and not to another group, that certainly can be considered discriminatory. And keeping in mind that there are people that maybe would like to get the vaccine but cannot get them for medical reasons or religious reasons, not giving them the increase but giving it to someone else could be considered a human rights violation. It's discrimination basis of disability or religion. So I have a concern with that concept right there. So right there, I think there's some problems. There's also the equal pay for equal work legislation and rules that could be impacted here. And the other concern, of course, is with respect to unionized employees. You can't just do that. If you have unionized employees, the collective agreement specifies how much you have to pay individuals. And if you decide to not follow that, that's a breach of the collective agreement. That could easily be something the union will deal with. So certainly doing what Chapman's is doing in this case, that definitely comes with legal liability.
So how can workplaces encourage or incentivize vaccinations within legal parameters?
So first of all, I would focus on incentive as opposed to punishment, because if you punish employees, that could cause all other kinds of liability and exposure for the employer. And if you are going to provide incentives, make sure that those incentives are also provided to those that would otherwise be able to get the vaccine but can't because of medical or religious reasons. So you're not violating human rights laws. I think that's the only very small way to do it, that there's a small window to do that, but certainly caution is necessary here.
Oh, for sure. So, Lior, a lot of people moved during the pandemic, but now some employers are cutting pay for staff who have moved to less expensive areas, with the justification that living expenses have been lowered now. Have you been hearing stories like this at all? And can employers do that?
Candace, I've been seeing this quite often over the past years, employers saying, well, if you're not going to be in the office, you're going to work somewhere and pay less rent or mortgage, we're going to reduce your pay. And that's not proper. An employer does not have the ability to unilaterally reduce an employee's pay. So the only way they could do that is if they give the employee the option to still come into work, get paid as normal. But if the employee chooses to live somewhere else, then that comes with a pay decrease. At that point, at least, it would be the employee's choice, and they'd have the option not to have their pay reduced. But if the pay is reduced unilaterally, that's not something an employer can get away with, and certainly it would create, again, more legal liability.
I see. So what else should folks be aware of if they find themselves in this situation where your pay is reduced because you moved?
So anytime you're looking at reduction in pay, and frankly, any other significant changes to terms of employment, reduction in hours, a demotion, this concept, this term of constructive dismissal should come to mind. And the idea behind a constructive dismissal is that the employer has breached the terms of employment, and that gives the employee the right and the option to treat their employment as being terminated. So it's not a perfect solution. An employee can't necessarily physically restrain their employer from reducing their pay, but what they can do is treat it as a constructive dismissal, treat it as a termination, and then require their employer to pay them severance. That could be a significant amount, up to 24 months pay when we're talking about constructive dismissal. So that is the option that's going to be available to employees.
Okay, as always, I learned something new. Thank you so much for your time. That's employment lawyer Lior Samfiru. Have a good one. Thanks again.